welcome everyone to tonight's Community Board hearing on the St. Vincent Rudin Development Plan. My name is Brad Hoylman. I'm the chair of Community Board 2. I first want to acknowledge some representatives of elected officials who are here with us this evening. From Speaker Quinn's office is Gray Elam. Gray. Congressman Nadler is being represented tonight by Aaron Drinkwater. Assemblywoman Glick is being represented tonight by Bethany Jankinis. Dick Godfrey has his representative Jenny Sullivan here. Jenny. And Senator Duane is being represented by Crystal Gold-Pond. And Borough President Stringer has his rep, Hunter Johansson here. And I wanted to acknowledge our district manager, Bob Gormley, who's done a terrific job tonight in organizing it. The public hearing process is so incredibly important to what we do as volunteers on the community board. So I'm extremely gratified, and I know I speak for my fellow board members, to see the incredible turnout tonight. So thanks to everyone for coming tonight. Before we get started, I wanted to lay out some ground rules because we have such a busy schedule tonight. We're going to get started shortly with remarks from the President and CEO of St. Vincent Hospital, Henry Amoroso. Followed by him will be a presentation from architects from both development teams representing St. Vincent Hospital and the Rudin organization. Those guys will be going on for about 20 minutes each. With that reaction, I hope they get the message that they need to make it as brief as possible. On the other hand, this is very important information, and we all want to, and I know the committee members and the community board want to get as much information tonight as possible. There will be someone else representing a demolition team, and he will be given a few minutes to speak, I think 2 minutes. And then members of this committee, which is the Omnibus St. Vincent Hospital Committee, will be asking questions. Each of us will have one question. The Community Board Landmarks Committee, which Sean Sweeney is the chair, will each also ask a question, and then we'll have questions from the Community Board members, and then we'll begin the public session, where members of the public will have 2 minutes to make a statement. As I said before, you need to fill out a speaker's card and bring it forward. The speaker's card portion will be closed at 7:30. So set your watches for that. And I'm apologizing in advance if we don't get to everyone this evening. We do have this space until 9:30, but not a minute later, and we will have to vacate. I've just been told we already have 120 people who want to speak. I should add that's great. That's actually great. Yeah. Sean Sweeney has just done the math and tells me that's 4 hours at 2 minutes each. Thanks, Sean. I should give you the CB2 email address, which is info@cb2manhattan.org if you want to submit written comments. And then in addition to that, and I'll talk about this briefly in a minute, Senator Tom Duane, along with Community Board 2, have established an online comments site. And you can go to tomduane.com to access that. And then finally, we need to tell you that there are going to be future opportunities to weigh in. This is not the official public hearing for the all-important ULURP portion of the process. That will be occurring in a couple of months. In addition, we're going to have another hearing of the Community Board next month on Monday, February 25th at 6:30 p.m., location to be announced. So I want you to know about that. And secondly, third rather, there will be other opportunities with other city agencies, and we'll keep you apprised of that. But let me introduce the members of the committee, all these people sitting up here. From Community Board 2, the first Vice Chair, Joe Hamilton. Second Vice Chair, Bo Riccobono. An important person tonight is the Chair of our Landmarks and Public Aesthetics Committee, which is Sean Sweeney. Our Zoning and Housing Chair is David Reck. Institutions Chair, David Gruber. Shirley Secunda is on our Traffic and Transportation Committee. She'll be joining us shortly. Keen Berger represents our Social Services and Education Committee. And our Environment, Public Safety, and Public Health Committee is represented by its Chair, Jason Mansfield. We've appointed a number of public members from the neighborhood, and I want to introduce those folks. Richard Davis from 155 West 12th Street. Marilyn Dorado, who heads the Greenwich Village Block Associations. Former Councilwoman Carol Greitzer from the West 12th Street Block Association. Trevor Stewart from 175 West 13th Street. Tim Stock is representing the West 11th Street Block Association. Gary Tomei from the West 13th Street 100 Block Association. And we have a number of members of the Landmarks Committee here from Community Board 2. If you could stand, rise, and be acknowledged, along with our Community Board 2 members. If folks could stand. I see Sheila Feinberg, Ed Gold, Elaine Young, former Chair Maria Durr. Everybody should know Doris Beaver. Andrew Jones. Lois Rakoff. Albert Bennett, who serves as a public member on the Landmarks Committee. So thanks to all of them for your participation tonight. And I'm going to give a brief summary of where we are with this process. So the folks who have the PowerPoint that I uploaded, if they could start it now, wherever they are. Yes, see, the architects are working on our behalf. Thanks. Okay. Just been told there's a BlackBerry that's been lost. So it's up here. Okay. So I just wanted to give folks a brief history of where we are on this project. In December '06, St. Vincent's came to the community board. They soon thereafter created a working group. Rudin, the Rudin family was selected as the development partner in May 2007. And then Rudin and St. Vincent Hospitals selected architects in July 2007. They then developed a design concept plan, and the community board co-hosted a public information meeting in October along with our elected officials. Since then, Community Board 2 has been holding meetings with community stakeholders, with local block association leadership, some of whom are serving on this committee. We've been working closely with our elected officials and meeting with the executives from both the hospital and the Rudin family. Back in November, we sent a letter after some initial meetings requesting additional information and clarification on some key points. We had a follow-up meeting with the local block association leadership in December. St. Vincent's sent us their response on December 20th, and you can get a copy of our initial letter and St. Vincent's response at the Community Board website, which I hope you can see is CB2Manhattan.org. We're essentially at phase 1 of this process, and that was triggered by St. Vincent filing an application with the Landmarks Preservation Commission on December 31st. As many of you probably know, the project includes 9 properties that, and why we're here tonight, is that they lie within the Greenwich Village Historic District. St. Vincent's is requesting certificates of appropriateness they're called, and there are 5 of them. And as part of that process, a public hearing is required. The next phase is phase 2. Now, everything will be contingent on approval by the Landmarks Preservation Commission. If that is approved, St. Vincent's is going to seek what's called certification under the Uniform Land Review Procedure, otherwise known as ULUP. And that is an application from the Department of City Planning for zoning changes, and it's under the large-scale community facility designations, which include zoning map and text changes. In addition, in Phase 2, 3 public hearings are required and recommendations are made. Once there is certification under ULUP, there is a clock that begins ticking. That clock has not begun yet. But within that clock is, under the community board, there's a 60-day period for our review. The borough president and the borough board has 30 days. The city planning commission has 60 days. And the New York City Council, who will ultimately decide this, has 50 days. As I mentioned before, the community board formed what we're calling the St. Vincent Hospital Committee Omnibus Committee. And the idea was to tap expertise on a whole range of areas of folks who chair our different committees. That I've mentioned them: landmarks, zoning, traffic, social services, environment, public safety, and health. And then we've brought in folks from the local community, and you just met those good people who are serving from the Greenwich Village Block Association, the local associations that are part of GVBA, and nearby buildings. Some of the goals that we've outlined as the community board: in the short term, we really want to emphasize that we're trying to provide a fair and open process. We really want to help serve as a resource for the public during this entire process, and we want to facilitate input from everyone here tonight moving forward. The longer term goals, our goal of this committee is to help identify the community priorities shaped by what you tell us tonight and at future public hearings. And we're going to try to reach a reasonable consensus among the stakeholders. Notice that exclamation point after consensus. And then eventually we're going to be submitting a resolution, we hope, that reflects the consensus. Now, next steps going forward on the landmarks review process. As I said before, we're having a hearing on Monday, February 25th at 6:30, location to be announced. The plans are going to be reviewed by Sean Sweeney's Landmarks and Public Aesthetics Committee, which will provide input to this omnibus committee. I wanted to announce that the community board has engaged the Columbia University School of Planning to assist with analysis of these plans. And we have the support tonight of Ethel Sheffer, who is here tonight, if I could acknowledge Ethel, and her students. Ethel? Ethel, where is Ethel? Could you wait? There she is. Ethel worked under the former borough president in land use and is the president of the New York chapter of the American Planning Association. So we're really happy to have her on board, and an adjunct at Columbia University. And I know Columbia University knows something about land use. We're going to be coordinating all this input with elected officials. And again, here is Senator Duane's website, which is at tomduane.com, where there is an online email survey you can take and input your comments there. You can only do it once, I might add, so don't get tricky. And then under the ULUP review, it's going to be a similar, what we hope to be is an open and deliberative process. The Omnibus Committee is going to take the lead. We're going to have David Rex, Zoning and Housing Committee, to provide input. And then we're going to be submitting a resolution to the City Planning Commission that reflects, hopefully, consensus. And just to summarize what we've heard so far, after all these meetings that the community board has held, and a lot of independent groups and organizations, including the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation and local block associations, have been meeting, and we greatly appreciate that activism. But here are the big points thus far. Height and bulk, no surprise. Community amenities, and those I think consist of a community facility or something to that effect. Healthcare delivery is something that we've been hearing. By the way, these are no order. There's concern, widespread concern, about the historic buildings as well as the historic artifacts within the buildings. Public school space is a key element of this discussion. By the way, the community board had a public hearing last week that had over 300 people, chaired by Keenberger, about this very issue. Affordable housing has been at the forefront of many of our discussions, and I know there are some folks here on that issue. The streetscape design is key. I know the architects will be addressing that. The open space in the triangle needs to be discussed. the impact of ambulance and parking access on the side streets, the effect of the project on the current infrastructure, not just public schools, but what about the water system and the electricity grid? And then the construction and demolition protocols should this process go forward. So that is my spiel for the moment. Do any of my fellow committee members have anything to say? If not, I will turn it over to the architects who will, oh, I'm sorry, to Mr. Henry Amoroso. Henry, welcome. And
I will move quickly, Mr.
yes,
Chairman.
thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Members of the community board and this committee, friends of St. Vincent's, members of the Landmark Commission, neighbors, all of you who have taken time out of your day to be here tonight, thank you. At the outset, I want to thank you for providing me the opportunity to address you, as I am privileged tonight to represent St. Vincent's Catholic Medical Center regarding our plans to build a new hospital related to our application to the New York Landmarks Preservation Commission. As you are aware, we have taken the opportunity many times to dialogue with you, members of the community, for more than 1 year regarding this very significant project, which ultimately will not only affect our neighbors here in Greenwich Village, but a significant portion of the New York City population. It is appropriate for us to note that some members of the community working group have shared with us their honest and sincere frustrations, that they do not think we have come forward soon enough, and further, that we have not shared as much information as we could have or should have. Though I am relatively new to this process, having begun my service this past July, I have urged all members of our team to meet with every community group, every organization, every individual, every neighbor, every stakeholder desiring further information. That remains our commitment to you. From what I can gather to this point, the process, though clearly imperfect and even dissatisfying to some, is more expansive and forthcoming than any I am aware of in New York City. Certainly, there are those who justifiably feel we have not acknowledged substantially enough their concerns. In response, and quite sincerely, I can only say that since my time in this process, there has been significant accommodations to the concerns of the different and sometimes contradictory voices of our immediate community. I assure you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the community board and this committee, that we remain firmly committed to working with all members of this community and seek the opportunity to work together to determine the best way forward. Recently, I've had the opportunity to review a number of letters, but one letter in particular from a member of the working group, who I believe has phrased the issue well. She wrote, "There seems to be little question that a new and modern hospital is necessary. Please be assured that despite the challenges of this difficult and complex process, we are thankful to this community for your support in recognizing the long history of dedicated care that St. Vincent's caregivers have provided to this community and beyond, most particularly to the poor, the vulnerable, the needy, those disenfranchised voices who are not likely here this evening. Further, we are grateful to the community not only for the acknowledgement of our past successes, but for your future partnership and commitment to maintaining the best quality healthcare delivery that we can possibly provide. Our deliberations present us with interesting public policy considerations, namely legitimate and appropriate concerns of government to ensure adherence to land use requirements, as well as the important and legitimate social and governmental objective of maintaining our valuable landmarks, while at the same time balancing these against the compelling need for a state and city to deliver vital healthcare access to this whole community. I have spoken time and time again about the dire need of capital confronting New York hospitals, and have spoken very directly about the poor condition of our facilities and the need to raise capital to rectify this and build a new facility. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you should know clearly that the sources of capital are three. They are government, they are philanthropy, and they are assets. It is no secret that there is too little and even inadequate capital from government sources. Further, there is an inability to develop enough substantial philanthropy to fulfill the costs of this project in building a new hospital. Therefore, we are regrettably and painfully left to our real estate assets, which are the only way that government and private partnership can work together to ensure the funding of a public purpose hospital. As you know, we have examined various options possible for the delivery of health care in the neighborhood. And all those who have objectively reviewed our findings have concluded that a new building is the most efficient, cost-effective, and only way to go. I am aware that an alternative plan has been presented by certain members of this community for our consideration. This plan calls for further segregation of key functions of the hospital, which might even be connected via a bridge to our old campus over 7th Avenue. Though creative and well-intentioned, I am sure, and aimed at meeting the needs of all the different stakeholders, it is, in my opinion, not a viable proposal that can work either in functionality, cost, or medical appropriateness. Nonetheless, I have asked our hospital design team, our healthcare planners, our certificate of need consultants, and indeed members of the Department of Health and Department of Transportation for the state and the city to be prepared to answer your questions in this regard. I have asked our team tonight to answer any and every question that you put to them regarding all of our assumptions and for all the considerations that we've put forth, so you understand our thinking and that it is fully transparent. Despite the feelings of some, we have equal regard and respect for all those who so earnestly putting forth their deepest concerns in a good spirit of collaboration. Despite the number of letters we received, we are encouraged by your call for collaboration. In closing, please allow me to say on behalf of the St. Vincent's community, the Sisters of Charity, the Diocese of Brooklyn, the Board of Directors, and the almost 4,000 employees who work at our facility in Manhattan, that we extend to you our heartfelt gratitude for undertaking this awesome responsibility. We look forward to our continued collaboration and continue to allow St. Vincent's to serve this community as it has now done for 153 years. Thank you, and thank you for your support.
Thank you, sir. We've been joined by another community board member, Rocio Sands. Rocio, thank you for joining us tonight. I wanted to also let people know that the architect's presentation is being videotaped by our volunteer cameraman, David Siegel. Thank you, David, and will be posted on the Community Board's website for your review. So why don't we start with the presentation? There are some seats up front, and it's a little cooler down here. So there are seats up front. I know, I heard you heat. I heard heat, but I said seat. We're looking into that. Okay. Okay, let's start.
Okay, thank you. I will try to be, but I do know I have a small obligation to be comprehensive as well. First of all, the outline of the Greenwich Village Historic District, as you can see indicated on the map by the dotted line. The sites that we are going to discuss this evening are shaded in red and in green over here on 7th Avenue and the intersection of 12th Street. Sorry. Okay. The current campus is occupied by a series of significant buildings, and the details regarding these buildings will be discussed further this evening. Now, my obligation is to talk about the proposed plan for the new hospital building. And in doing so, I will take one moment to review briefly the origins of the hospital and the fundamental mission that St. Vincent's has.
Sir, is it possible? You're going to have to raise your voice.
Okay.
I know that's not your nature.
I'm sorry.
I'll take care of it.
Can you just... Sorry. Okay.
What about the history of the community? Shh, please. We can help him by being quiet.
Okay. So the original building, small, modest, and very personal in terms of one's approach to that structure. When one contrasts that building to the Coleman building, one sees the challenge we face in terms of the expansion of scale in healthcare, the triumph of system over individual, and so on. And our responsibility as architects here is to try and help address this problem. Now, in thinking about the site itself and the context in terms of the urban pattern in Manhattan here, you see an arrangement of streets that are somewhat atypical of the typical Manhattan grid. And to understand this arrangement of streets, we look briefly at how this part of town came to be. So the original layout of Greenwich Village.
Please, let's have some courtesy.
First of all, on the left here, you see the original layout of the streets of Greenwich Village in an approximate grid. And then, in the early 19th century, the coming of the future Manhattan grid superimposed on the Greenwich Village grid, resulting in the map of the commissioners, where there's a juxtaposition in orientation between those two grids. Our responsibility is to find a way of mediating between those two propositions. 7th Avenue was extended in the early 20th century, and that brings us to the current situation. Now, in terms of the site itself and the key elements surrounding the site, first of all, the proposed site for the hospital is currently occupied by the O'Toole building. You know that building as well as anyone. That building is somewhat anomalous in the neighborhood, but memorable. It has some issues in terms of its presence, a shadowy ground floor, blank walls, and a very complicated and problematic interior. Then in terms of the triangle over here, which is also an important part of this project, currently occupied by landscape but not accessible to the public. There's a service building which is also occupies that triangle, which is very important in terms of making the hospital function. And is currently connected under 7th Avenue to the existing campus, and in the future will be connected under 12th to the new site. The existing Coleman building, 200 feet high on the east side of 7th Avenue, and the other fairly significant buildings up on the east side of 7th Avenue, which line that street on its east side. Then to our immediate north, the village church, a very important architectural gem in the neighborhood, and facing Greenwich Avenue, a series of buildings, 6 stories tall, which establish what we believe is an appropriate scale for the enclosure of that triangle. Our immediate neighbor, a rental apartment building, also 6 stories tall, and the view from Bank Street, which shows some of the wonderful qualities of the streets in the village. The subway is an important presence here too, and there are a series of subway station access points on 7th Avenue that make this a very public place. Now, in terms of the overall strategy that we propose here, we have, first of all, identified, aside from the juxtaposition of orientation of the street grid, there is also a juxtaposition of scale which exists in this part of the city. Here we see indicated in the tan color the lower buildings, and in white the taller buildings, as you see depicted in this model. In coming to the proposal that we put forward before you this evening, we have studied a number of alternatives, among them a T-shaped building and a building which has a setback, an attempt to reduce a confrontation between the building and its neighbors, and to find a way of adjusting this large building to the scale of its immediate neighbors, as you see over here, not terribly successful. And so the proposal that we are advancing this evening makes use of a rotational geometry which enables us to make facades on 12th Street and 7th Avenue, as well as on 13th Street, which are all of the character of the lower buildings in the neighborhood. Additionally, we extend that idea to the west and can establish a prow for the building. And when one looks at the building from the orientation of the streets in the village, you see the narrowness of the building as seen from that perspective. As well as you see here the effect of the podium, which establishes a continuity of scale for the street walls surrounding the triangle. And that results in a building which has a landscape podium and a tower element above. And this is a depiction of the building in its context. And so you see here how this building is a termination of the taller buildings that come down 7th Avenue. In its form, it announces the orientation of the streets in the village and opens up the space to the triangle over here to lighten air, as well as making as much as we can of the views past the building. Here you see again the continuation of the cornice line of the neighboring buildings in the podium of the proposed design. Now, to take a quick tour around the building at its base to see how it feels on the street. First of all, standing on West 12th Street looking east, here you see the podium, and it's now a terraced podium with landscape elements and the relationship of it to the immediate neighbor as well as the building across the way. Then we stand on 7th Avenue and look south and take a look at the relationship again of the podium to the upper part of the building and the opening of the entrance on 7th Avenue as well as a proposed canopy. Then we stand now on West 12th Street and look west, and you see here again the podium of the building and the upper part extending beyond. Now we stand on the Bank Street and take a look again the way we did before, and here you see the building actually extending up over here. And had we built the building straight up, of course, it would have occupied much more of the sky space. Now, we're going to stand briefly on West 13th Street and look west. And here you see, again, the effect of this as setback of the building and the stepping podium, making the elevation of this building consistent with the scale of the other buildings on 13th Street. And now we stand on 7th Avenue and look north briefly, and here you see the podium and the curved building extending above.
Sir.
Now briefly to take a series of elevations, looking at the building first of all from the Greenwich Avenue. Here we see the podium, the relationship of the landscape in the triangle to the landscape on the podium, and the building extending above with the prow of the structure. And these are the heights of the building, 329 feet to the top of the parapet, which screens the mechanical systems, 272 feet to this setback over here, 72 feet to the main podium, and 56 feet to the setback with the landscape element. Now we take a look at the building, the elevation on 13th Street looking south, and here you see first of all the podium element and the building curving away above, and we are incorporating in this elevation the chapel of the building, which is a very important component of this project. And then looking at the front elevation on 7th Avenue, here you see the main entrance. Again, the relationship of the height of the podium to the surrounding buildings, and then the tall building rising above and curving away. Now, this is a section of the building, and again, to give you the various heights of the components, the top of it, 329 feet, and the various setback levels indicated over here. You'll note that the building has 4 basements. We have done that basically to achieve the height of the podium that we have. Otherwise, of course, the podium would have been way up. This is the medical program contained in the building. Here you see the emergency department on the ground floor. Above that, there are critical clinical functions, as well as in the podium, in the basement as well. Above here, you see the intensive care units, the inpatient areas, OB, NICU, postpartum, and mechanical above. And all of these floors are connected by a single elevator core that transcends the building. Now, in terms of just briefly the plan, ground floor plan showing the entrances, entrance on 7th Avenue over here, series of emergency walk-in and drop-off entrances also on 7th Avenue here, as well as on 12th Street. And there is a pickup entrance on 13th Street indicated on the north over here. Other floor briefly, the OR floor, the support floor, which includes the chapel, includes auditorium and cafeteria. And then this is a typical acute care floor and the typical inpatient floor. And so just some details now of the facade treatment. The building is intended to be clad in terracotta. Here you see a system of articulation in that. The main entrance is intended to be transparent to suggest the life of the building to the street. There is an undulating protective canopy which extends along 7th Avenue over here, which also protects the entrances to the emergency department. And the entrance to the subway is also incorporated within the volume of the building over here. Just a close-up detail of the main entrance. Here again you see the canopy and signage announcing the identity of the hospital. The windows in the podium are intended to be vertical, to be consistent with the spirit of windows in masonry walls that you find in the neighborhood. And there are some lines which transect those openings and protective extending canopies beyond to both provide shading as well as a sense of intimacy. And then on the south side, we too have the continuing undulating canopy with the two emergency entrances. There's a large glass window, which again communicates beyond the life of the interior of the building, setbacks with landscape elements and the landscape podium and the curving building above. On the north side, with the accommodation of the chapel, this is a much more vertical facade. That we have the volume of the chapel here and an entrance over here, also with a vertical glass above. And this is a detail of that entrance. And now just some small details about the terracotta system of the units of terracotta that make up the facade on the scale of the protecting canopies and sunshades. Likewise, the upper part of the building, there are some shades, sunshades, which provide shading for the interior of the building and make it energy efficient. This is a north facade. On the south facade, that's not necessary, so there's a different glazing system over there. In terms of the terracotta itself, it's a system of planks that is accumulated in units, like siding, and that in turn translates itself into the facade of the building. And the corner has a radius. And there's a radius corner, which has a sort of an 8-inch radius piece. In terms of the triangle and the landscape on the triangle, this is actually will be a subject of collaboration between our team and the community representatives. It's obviously an opportunity for a significant public amenity. On that triangle, of course, is a service building, which we have now reorganized to make the access for trucks simpler, more fluid, and less intrusive in terms of the immediate neighbors. And this, of course, will be the subject of much further discussion. And my obligation is also to show you the facades of the building on the triangle, also clad in terracotta, and these are the various faces of that building as you go around. And then finally, just the point about the orientation of the building. The sun, we face the sun perfectly, and as the sun drops in the sky, we allow it in to help with the warming of the interior. And that is the summary presentation of the design of the building.
Thank you for raising your voice with us. We appreciate it. On to the next presentation.
Good evening. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Community Board 2. My name is Dan Kaplan. I'm a senior principal at FX Fowl Architects. We are the architects for the Rudin organization, and our responsibility is the east portion of 7th Avenue. I'm going to quickly go through this analysis of the historic district and then show you our proposal. When you go back into the designation report, you really find that it recognizes a key attribute of the Greenwich Village Historic District and the neighborhood itself, and that is it's really made up of two distinct environments, very vital avenues with mid-rises and up to 20-story buildings and local landmarks, and that is balanced with side streets of townhouses, row houses, and such. So what I'm going to do tonight is quickly go through how the site that exists east of 7th really doesn't fit into that pattern at all, and how we have a proposal, we have an opportunity here to reinstate the historic pattern and make the site really seem seamless with the east side of 7th Avenue. So when you start with the site, you see what's here today. On the site is really cheek by jowl development, very dense, very out of character with the rest of the neighborhood. From a use point of view, the blue is a community facility. This is the site, and you really see that community facility has a lot of frontage in the neighborhood and in the district, and it is out of character with the more typical development. From a height point of view and a bulk point of view, really what you find on the site here are, with the reds and oranges, are the taller buildings. The taller buildings are mid-block and on the avenue, and that you contrast that with more of the typical development. It really is quite out of character, much more dense. When height does occur in the district, it occurs at the intersection of the two grids Ian talked about and at the extension of the avenues. What does it feel like on the street? These are side streets with a informality, ups and downs in terms of heights of the townhouses. And the best example of what I call the bookend buildings, which are at the intersections of the two grids and where height does occur in the historic district, are the Bing and Bing buildings from the teens and 20s. They really are very beautiful. They have a lot of setbacks at the top, very statuesque. And I think the two scales are best exemplified in the historic district by 1 Fifth Avenue as it relates to the mews behind. So you get these two scales working together. From a green point of view, green space point of view, there's really three types of green spaces in Greenwich Village. One are parks and triangles. Two are the inner rear yards, the private green spaces. And three, very importantly, are the green strips that you find at stoop zones and with the plantings. And those are exemplified here, illustrated here. This is the property line, and the building is set back in typically anywhere from 5 to 12 feet. What this does is two things. One is it makes the streets wider, letting more daylight in, giving you a better sense of scale. And two, it allows for plantings to happen within the property line. So this person walking down the street has street trees on one side and plantings on the other, and it really envelops the pedestrian in a real village experience. And so when you go back in history, you really find what was on the site was very similar to that pattern. This is, these buildings no longer exist on the site. This is the corner of 12th and 7th. And then the townhouses that existed on the site prior to the hospital's expansion. This photograph from the 40s. The 1911 tax map, the dark reds, oranges are townhouses, and the yellows are the institutional buildings. And really what's happened is, over time, as the hospital has expanded, it slowly but surely has eroded this pattern of townhouses on the side street and the avenue buildings, for very good reasons, for the uses that went on within the function that went on in the hospital, but really quite out of scale, until at the end you have really this replacement of a neighborhood with something that's really quite out of scale, with something that was compatible with something that today is, in our mind, architecturally mediocre. And really, what you have here is a very large agglomeration in a very sensitive neighborhood. Just walking around the site, this is Reese on 12th, Nurses on 12th, Smith and Raskob on 12th, and together they make a 475-foot long brick wall across the street from 12th Street, which you can see much more of the typical development of brownstones and avenue bookends. 7th Avenue, the Coleman Building and the Link Building. Spellman on 11th, paired with Cronin here. You can see it rising above the context. And together they make a strong opposition, very out of scale with what's immediately across the street on South, on the side of the street actually we're standing in right now, on South 11th Street. So our proposal, going back to the tax map, seeks to reinforce or reinstate the spirit of this with the townhouses on the side street and the avenue bookend. This is our proposal now in context with this is 11th Street, 7th Avenue, 12th Street, townhouses on 11th, a C-shaped end building with transition wings, a taller piece on the avenue, transition wings, townhouses on 12th, and a building that is against the Martin Payne building, which will remain. So from a three-dimensional point of view, this is 7th Avenue South, 11th Street, 12th Street, the townhouses, 10 townhouses on 11th, the transition wing, the avenue bookend. This is 12th, and the building immediately adjacent to Martin Payne and Martin Payne itself. Looking the opposite way, this is 12th, Martin Payne existing to remain. The mid-block building that we're proposing, 9 townhouses, a transition wing of the avenue building, the avenue bookend, and then back down at 11th Street. This is an elevation from 6th Avenue to 7th Avenue. Our project line starts here, that's Martin Payne. We have an 11-story building. It steps down to 5-story townhouses, and then up to a 21-story building at the avenue. When you compare that there today, that's the red line of the profile. This shows you, I guess you can't read that from here, is the building heights. The tallest part of the tallest building is 265 feet. These are the brownstones on 12th. We've really strived very hard to make a variety of heights, of widths, of colors, of some with stoops, some without stoops, and so forth, to recall the scale of the neighborhood. This is a view from the street looking west, and this is superimposing what's there today with Reese, Nurses, Smith, and Raskob. This is 7th Avenue, 13th, 12th, 11th, and so forth, showing the building. It's 21 stories at the avenue. Getting closer, this is 175 West 12th. This is the building on the corner of Greenwich and 11th. We have made a 17-story street wall building here. It steps up to 19, then 21. There's a setback here at 18. There's a significant setback here at 4, and these cornice lines relate. This is the view from 12th Street looking east, showing the coloration and the size and tonality of the building, the character of the building. This is 11th Street now, 6th Avenue. This is 131 West 11th, and from that, just west of that, starts our project. These are the townhouses and the step up to the bookend building. That compares with what's there today, the red line. This is a little bit of the detail of the base of the building. There's a variety of setbacks and heights of the street wall, 4 stories, 5 stories. It starts to set back so that we're relating to the scale. This is the avenue, 11th Street townhouses, a variety of colors, like very similar to 12th Street. This is a view looking west, comparing to what's there today. So you can see we are establishing a lower height, and this shows the artist rendering of what 11th Street would look like looking west. This is the edge of 131, and then the new builds are all in here. Again, a variety of scales, textures, so that this really feels like a piece of the village with the bookend at the end of the block. In terms of the architecture, the expression, these are photographs from the historic district. Really, a few things to note here. One, the vertical portion of the windows. Two, that in terms of vocabulary, the brick is always paired with another material. Here it's limestone, here it's cast stone, here it's terracotta, but there's always this mix of brick and other materials, and we've recaptured on that. And finally, these beautiful textures that you see. Really, from a color texture point of view, the 7th Avenue building will be very light. This is an example of the brick that we're proposing, which is modeled. It's made up of 4 different colors of brick. Very light on its feet. Actually, this is the brick that those Bing and Bing buildings are. If they were clean, they would look like that. 12th Street really has much darker, richer, darker red character to reflect the context there. This is a photographs of the existing condition on 12th Street. And 11th Street is very nice because it faces south, and 11th Street has a lot of coloration, it's a lot of character, so we've sought to reinstate that as well in our building. These gives you a sense of the texture and the mix of brick and cast stone and vertical windows that we're proposing. These are some samples of our many wall types from the avenue. As you get higher in the building, it gets lighter and lighter until it's just the cast stone. And then this is an image of one of the buildings on 12th Street that we're proposing, again, darker and richer. Now, I'm just going to shift gears quickly and do from a plan point of view. I just want to talk about the ground floor plan. It's very important. This is 11th Street. These are 10 townhouses. They're set back 11 feet from the property line, so you get the green zones. Then the building, when it gets to the transition, steps back to 4 feet from the street, so you get a planting zone. And finally, there's an entry recess, retail at the avenue, along the avenue in the corners, an entrance to doctor's offices on 7th Avenue. Then on 12th Street, the retail wraps around approximately 80 feet. There's a recess for the entrance, retail, and a street setback, townhouses, 9 of them, on 12th Street with a 11-foot setback, and then our building sets back. This is the 11-story building, sets back and marries with Martin Payne. We are proposing a curb cut here and a below-grade parking garage. So now I'm just going to show how the effect of both buildings work in the neighborhood. First, from a retail continuity point of view, this is the hospital site. Here's the triangle, and here's the site I just talked about. Blue is retail continuity, and one of the things that really makes these avenue works is having retail. It brings vitality, brings eyes on the street. In the proposal, we will complete the loop, if you will, of retail so that the fabric is healed over. From a use point of view, today, a lot of frontage of community facility in the neighborhood, especially along 11th and 12th Street in the residential neighborhood. In the proposal, we've restated the residential use east of Scilly is concentrated on a much smaller footprint. From a height point of view, the today condition, the reds being the highest, orange medium, and tans lower, and the proposal has the higher buildings on the avenue where they should be, and townhouses and the low-rise mid-block where they should be in terms of historic pattern, so that you get the lower scale pushing up north. And finally, from a green space point of view, today almost 100% lot coverage Very little greening of the triangle, none of the green centers of the space, no green edges. The proposal reinstates the green center of the block, reinstates the green edges, greens the triangle, and of course with the podium green roofs that Ian talked about, will green the hospital site itself. And finally, really what we're trying to do is make the south side of the street, of 12th Street for instance, feel much more like the north side of the street with its characteristic mix of townhouses, a transition building, and the bookend. And so with that, I leave that image. I thank you very much and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. You brought that in there for 20 minutes, and we greatly appreciate it. Mr. Higgins.
No, we don't need it. Thanks. Good evening, and I'm here to make 4 points as close to 30 seconds apiece as I can, because you're not here to listen to me. My firm, Higgins Quaysbarth, are the landmarks consultants for this project, and we do not see our role tonight as to push demolition or a particular approach to that. Our role, as we see it, is to provide some basic thoughts and basic ideas which we hope will help in the entire landmarks review process, which will decide the fate of this very significant project. To that end, 4 points. First of all, the identity of St. Vincent's as a historic institution in Greenwich Village. We see this as a real bedrock issue here. There are major historic preservation concerns in this project, and they are not entirely about buildings. St. Vincent's is a historical institution. It's been in New York City and in Greenwich Village for over a century and a half, and is deeply interwoven into the cultural and historical and human fabric of this neighborhood, as well as its physical fabric. And the survival of this institution, which is what is at stake here, is itself a historical issue. It is a question of historic preservation, and I don't think that that should be forgotten in thinking about the physical aspects of preservation here. The second point is the previous history of the project site. And as you've seen from the architects, there has been a lot of evolution and a lot of change on this site. It has gone from low-rise to predominantly even deep into the mid-block high-rise or mid-rise. There are buildings here of very, very many periods, and the hospital's buildings are not among the earlier or even the sort of middle-aged buildings of Greenwich Village. So there is an issue of evolution, and we would ask that you consider, and that the process consider, the aspect of evolution and change in this project as well. It's part of an ever-changing Greenwich Village, and one that's been carefully thought about in terms of trying to reflect some of the aspects of what makes the village what it is. Thirdly, the existing buildings, in terms of their architectural and historical quality. This is not the time, and there is not time, to make an analysis of each individual building. They basically fall into two types. There are the modern buildings, which basically include Link, Coleman, Cronin, and O'Toole, very recent in date, and very, very distinct from the fabric of what makes Greenwich Village what it is. Then there are the buildings whose styles are historically referential. Smith, Raskob, the nurses' residence, Reese, and Spellman. These are not in a modernist vocabulary. They're in a quite simplified historical vocabulary, and they are, although on the one hand they do include materials and details in stone and terracotta. These are concentrated in specific areas in the buildings, and the buildings, to a large degree, are much simpler than that. As has been said before, they are deep into the mid-block, of very, very substantial scale. And so there's a real point to be thought about here in terms of how buildings of that scale in that location relate to their Greenwich Village context. Finally, the fourth point is the relationship of the proposed new buildings to the character of the district. And it seems to me there are two very simple points here. There are side street buildings and there are avenue buildings. There are buildings that are located on the grid streets, and there are buildings that are located in those unusual intersections which are formed by those angular intersections of the grid and the previous streets. What often happens in Greenwich Village is that the smaller scale buildings are to be found on the side streets, and the buildings of larger scale are to be found on the avenues, with buildings of sort of unusual shape, those sort of buildings that really stand out sculpturally, often occurring on those angled intersections. It seems to me that that is a very basic geometrical vocabulary that any new building, in order to be appropriate in this district, needs to follow. And that is the basic geometrical vocabulary that is being followed with both the hospital building at its intersection and with the proposed residential buildings and their combination of their avenue location and their side street location. Thank you, and I hope you'll consider all of this.
Discuss traffic or noise or density. For instance, if we're having 1,000 people moving in, that would be the zoning committee's purview, or how it would affect schools. So really, since we have very little time, please be direct and address what Landmarks Preservation Commission is going to be concerned about, namely what can be seen from the street, primarily what can be seen from the street, and address things like, you can address the height, you might want to address the materials that are used, whether or not glass is appropriate, whether or not it's not appropriate, whether or not, for instance, sometimes we don't approve buildings with too much glass, and other times we don't approve with too much brick. There should be a mixture. So please, just for your own good, don't go.
Tell them that they'll have an opportunity to address the
Oh, yeah. The other things like, thank you. Things like density and basically the height will be discussed next month. Or the permission to build so high would be granted at the zoning committee or not granted at the zoning committee next month. If traffic problems,
not next month. It's still a couple of months off.
Couple of months off. Traffic would be traffic problems with the traffic committee. Social service problems like community facilities would be the social service. So just really address things like whether it fits into the village or not fit into the village, and materials and the scale, like the man was discussing the low-rise and the high-rise buildings. And it would really be beneficial to everyone if you just be very focused. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean, for that primer. So we're going to start now the question portion from the committee. Just two community board members who have since joined us. Susan Kent, who's our secretary of the community board. Thank you, Susan. And Shirley Secunda, who's the chair of the Traffic and Transportation Committee, is here. And there's some seats down front, folks. Anyone in the back who wants a seat? There's at least 10 up here. So we have also now cut off the time for submission of speakers cards, as we said, at 7:30. So let's take it from members of the committee. Anyone to ask a question?
Yeah.
Yes, Shirley.
The question is not about traffic.
Okay, Shirley. One question.
It's not about traffic. Actually, it's about floor area. And I would just like to know comparatively what the floor area, the current floor area of the buildings that exist now is in comparison to the proposed structures, both on 11th Street and 12th Street.
Okay.
The question was, what is the floor area existing on the current campus? And what I have with me is the gross square footage, but not the zoning floor area. The gross square footage existing on the east side of the campus is 760,000 square feet. At the O'Toole site, it is 140 or so. I don't have the exact calculation. And on the triangle, it's about 5,000 square feet above grade today.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the committee? Richard Davis?
I want the comparison. She needed a comparison.
Richard Joe.
As I understand, because Mr. Amoroso, you made a reference to the need for capital. If I understand correctly, I want to make sure what we're allowed to consider and not consider, and that is that given the fact that St. Vincent's and Rudin didn't apply for a financial hardship in which they would have had to present financial information, is it correct that in analyzing the Rudin proposal, we do not need and indeed should not consider whether it has to be particular size or a particular number of units to generate a certain number of dollars? We should just look at it from the landmarking's perspective because there was not a financial hardship approach taken.
Can you repeat the question? We can't hear that.
Go ahead, repeat your question.
Get close to the
yes.
microphone.
Richard, if you could repeat the question.
Okay. All right? You got it. The question is, given the fact that St. Vincent's and Rudin did not file this under financial hardship rules for landmarks, doesn't that mean that we should not consider anything about whether the needs of Rudin to produce a certain amount of money for St. Vincent's, in other words, we should look at this just as the landmarks, and whether if we think 200 units is the right number from a landmarks perspective in terms of bulk and size, that would be the answer because because it's not financial hardship. We're not supposed to consider and shouldn't consider how much money is generated and how much money St. Vincent's needs.
Our submission to the Landmarks Commission is for certificates of appropriateness. You do not get to an issue of hardship until those applications have been turned down. So there's nothing to apply for right out of the gate to landmarks that would deal with a hardship application. We have provided the information in response.
Shelley,
Yeah.
could you identify yourself for everyone here?
Happy to, thank you. Shelley Friedman and Gottbaum, we're Land Use Council to St. Vincent's. The applications, as I said, are submitted for certificates of appropriateness. We have had, through the Community Working Group, a number of requests for the financial information that we've presented here tonight. We do not present this information as a predicate to the landmarks consideration. We provide it to be transparent and to be able to respond to the community about why the buildings they're looking at take on the specific masses that they do, and it's as simple as that.
Okay, so any other questions? Yes. Jason Mansfield from the committee.
I'm not sure who to address this question to, but if somebody could speak to the impact of the demolition of the existing buildings and how you will be protecting the fragile buildings in the area during the demolition and excavation.
The question was, how will the developers protect the existing buildings during the demolition portion? The surrounding buildings, that is.
We're going to ask Jones Lang LaSalle to speak to that, our representative here.
Thank you. I'm Jack Kennedy with Jones Lang LaSalle. The demolition will be protected from the surrounding buildings by scaffolding and netting. And a phasing plan will be done as far as construction hours and when we can work and when we can't work, which is typically reviewed by city planning before we undertake any type of demolition. We were the developers of Grand Central Terminal, and the protection there, I think, was great. We moved 500,000 people through the terminal every day without any injuries.
Yes. Another question. This is your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to address that information.
As a question. We're having questions.
I just want to add one thing to that St. Vincent's does want to have a construction work group that we set up through the community board so that particularly as we apply for LEED certification, we will be bound by a lot of guidelines in the construction process.
Just like Trump Soho.
I just wanted... Okay, it may not be obvious tonight, but there are other construction projects going on in Community Board too. And in response to a lot of things, including construction work by NYU, the board is now engaged in developing a construction standard protocol that we are going to be issuing forward, and we're working with a number of groups in our area. It'll include seismic monitoring and the way piles are installed and all of this stuff. So rest assured we'll have it in time for this one.
Okay, David Gruber from the committee.
Quickly, can you all hear me? Yes. Okay, great. To follow up on Shirley's question, you told us that there's some, I believe, 850,000 square feet of existing gross FAR. What is the proposal for the newly built FAR? Was it 9?
No, it's the existing above grade on the hospital site now is 760, and the proposed development on the hospital side gross is 650,000. On the O'Toole site today, I had the wrong number before, it's 173,000 gross square feet above grade today, and the proposed above grade is 480 with the new hospital there.
Thank you. Questions? Any other committee members? Yes. Carol Greitzer?
Yeah, I noticed that you didn't mention that you were going to change the direction of 12th Street to 2 ways between 7th and Greenwich because of the ambulance entrance. Now, nobody in the audience knows about that. The ambulance entrance is on 12th Street. Originally, when we first met, the very first meeting with the working group, both the hospital and the community people all agreed that the ambulance entrance should be on 7th Avenue. At the next meeting, or maybe the second thereafter, you said that the city wouldn't allow that, but there was never any discussion as to who you talked to in the city, or you didn't ask the community to join with you in going to the city and getting this changed. Now, the ambulance entrance does dictate the design to some degree, and I really wanted to know what dictated the moving of it to 12th Street, and who in the city told you that you couldn't do it on 7th Avenue?
Well, first of all, I'm Bernadette Kingham from St. Vincent's, and we are continuing to look at that. If you notice, we don't indicate that it's a 2-way street because we will continue our discussions. Excuse me? And we're reevaluating that, and we're continuing our discussions with DOT. I don't know if Sam Schwartz would like to say something. Sam Schwartz is our traffic consultant.
Thank you. Hi, Carol. It's good to see you again. Yes, we're investigating all of those issues, and we're looking at whether 7th Avenue is appropriate or 12th Street. There is no final determination on the street directions, whether that would be made 2-way or kept 1-way as it is today. So that's being reviewed with the Department of Transportation right now as we speak.
Traffic, of course, is one of those issues that Sean Sweetie mentioned, although not in the landmarks certificate of appropriateness ambit, it is obviously an issue we're following for other reasons. From the committee, question?
Yes. Can you hear me? It seems to me that you're asking for a certificate of appropriateness based on the fact that you're building high buildings, disproportionately high buildings, I might say, on 7th Avenue, and you're going to reduce the density or height of the buildings mid-block. Besides the fact that now you're bringing this down from 12th and 13th Street, and you're extending it down to 11th Street, these high buildings, does this suggest that other people in the community, other builders, would get certificates of appropriateness by building high buildings throughout the village, all the way down 7th Avenue? Isn't that the natural consequence if we allow you to build these buildings? Amen.
I don't know if that's a question or a statement, but this is a...
It seems to me that that's your project, and I'd like
Gary. Heard it. That was a legitimate question. So please answer.
I would, the one thing that I would like to highlight is this is the only hospital in a historic district. So the precedent is a unique issue.
He's talking about the roof.
Gary, we can't have crosstalk, please. Leonard.
Right, that's all I'm going to say.
Nothing else?
That's it, yep.
Yes. Keen Berger.
Do landmarks only talk about facades and streetscapes and not about people and schools and children and stuff like that? And not about how it's actually working for the people?
That's what this process is.
That is what we're doing tonight.
I help run a hospital, so I'm very much on the people side, but tonight I think our guideline is to speak about the structure, although we're in the business and our mission is people. So I'm more comfortable talking about people, but tonight I think our guide is to talk about the facades and the structure.
My question is basically about the large Rudin building, and I noticed that there's retail going pretty much down the block on West 11th Street and West 12th Street. Now, most of our retail uses and commercial uses right now are non-conforming uses, so how do you rationalize putting all that retail on residential blocks?
The plans show retail wrapping 80 feet down the side streets. The frontage of, to give you an idea of how that relates to the total frontage, is 475 feet of frontage on 12th, of which 80 would have retail at grade. I think it's a very consistent amount of what's called a retail corner wraparound that's consistent with the historic district. Why don't you say that?
And the retail is permitted in the district as it's now zoned. There just happens to be a hospital there, but it's as of right in this commercial district. The hospital is in a commercial district.
Okay, further questions from committee members? Seeing none, I will now move to the Landmarks Committee. And Doris Steeder always gets the first question from the Landmarks Committee. And Doris, we need to be brief.
This is strictly a landmarks question. I was looking at your plans for your buildings, and I can't quite understand in the historic district, with the district that we have now, how you came up with the hospital building with that strange shape, and also the townhouses that go up and down instead of being a kind of a uniform height on the side streets.
So in terms of the shape of a hospital building, as we mentioned, it's really predicated about the establishing the street facade height and to maximize the sight lines and light and so on in this area. And also, as you can see from the image on the screen, to acknowledge the orientation of the Greenwich Village streets, and this is a very unique situation.
Other members of the Landmarks Committee?
Brad, do you want me to address the townhouse?
Mr. Kaplan, yes, absolutely, sorry.
Sorry. In terms of the street wall cornice heights of the townhouses, we looked very carefully at the district. It is true that there are many examples of consistency, but there's also many examples of a sort of quirky up and down nature. And our calculus was that given the frontage, it would be better if we did something a bit more organic.
Thank you. Quick acknowledgement of two of the Borough President's representatives who are here. Sean Kahn from the Borough President's Office Sean, say hello. And Brian Cook from the Borough President's Office. Yes. Okay. Albert Bennett from the Landmarks Committee.
This is a question about the application to the LPC. I don't know to whom I should direct it, but I know it's only been there for 3 weeks. But do you have any idea of the status of that application? Has it been accepted for consideration? Is there any indication of when it might be calendared? Members of the committee, of both committees, are very concerned that we would have enough time before it is heard at the LPC.
The application process at the Landmarks Commission does not include a concept of the application being approved for acceptance like it does at city planning. You file your application and it goes into the process at the Landmarks Commission, and that is what's happened. The normal flow will be there will be discussions between the applicant and the St. Vincent's and the staff as they review the application, ask for supplemental material and the like, and when they feel that the application is properly at a point where it can be presented to the commission, they will tell us a calendar. We were pushing for a date in early February, but when we understood what the community board wanted to do with a special committee and the like, we told the Landmarks Commission we would have absolutely no objection to pushing that off so that the community board had adequate time to have its hearings and render a recommendation. Having given up our post time, I don't know when we're going to get it back, but the fact of the matter is we were happy to delay it so that the board would have the time to consider a resolution and adopt it. Hopefully we'll be at the Landmarks Commission sometime in March because you will finish your work by then.
And Albert, just so you know, the community board is working closely with the elected officials and making certain that there's enough public review. As I said, we've already scheduled one further public review meeting of the community board on February 25th. And there will be other opportunities. So we're not in the mood to rush anything here. Yes, Lois Rakoff from the Community Board and the Landmarks Committee.
Yeah, question. It's not about middle-class housing because it's... It's not about middle-class housing because I didn't hear anything about that. But it's about the townhouses. How many units, family units are...
Into the market.
How many? This is not middle-class housing, because I didn't hear. Or affordable housing. But the family units, how many family units will be in the townhouses? And how many family units are going to be in the 5-story building? And then I have a big question with the landmarks. But no big question, so just answer that.
Again, this goes back to the Landmarks submittal. We are showing 19 townhouses. The 19 townhouses have individual entrances off the street. Approximately half of them have stoops, and that means that they will not, that they really have to be filed as single or two-family houses, and the other half don't have stoops, and they can have multiple dwellings inside. So I can't tell you, and we don't know because the residential development will be eventually many years hence, that we don't know the exact breakdown of the units within the townhouse. I didn't understand your question about the 5-story portion. I'm not quite sure.
Curious about the high-rise.
Oh, okay. Again, it's not the subject of the application. We haven't laid it out in detail. There are many ways this building can be laid out in the future when the time comes for the final layouts, but our projection of the entire complex is between 375 and 425 units total, including the townhouses.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Any questions from other members of the Landmarks Committee? Any questions from members of the community board? Elaine Young?
This is a kind of another question based on his question and your question about the total square footage of the new complex. I had understood that the old St. Vincent's, with all its 3 sites, was about 900 and something thousand square feet, if you add them all up together. Now, and I thought that the new complex is more like 200 and something thousand square foot more, bigger. That's my question. Is that true?
The existing St. Vincent's facility on the west side of the street is just a little bit over 850,000 square feet. The O'Toole building is about 170,000 square feet. Those 2 buildings combined obviously add up to an excess of 1 million square feet. We are proposing on the O'Toole site a hospital of 665,000 square feet. The total square footage is at 624,000 square feet. That was 50,000 square feet among friends. And I'll ask Dan to tell you how large the complex that the Rudins are proposing is.
The above-grade gross floor area is 648,000 square feet.
Okay. Further questions? Ed Gold?
Over the years, there's been a lot of contention about the use of the triangle between the community and the hospital. Can you clarify exactly what you plan to do on the triangle? Is it going to be a park? Is it going to be a combination of a depot and a park? The picture showed trees all over. Well, what does that mean in terms of the community?
The current triangle configuration includes our oxygen tank. There's an air shaft there, and there's logistics for deliveries, which are below grade. We intend to maintain those facilities, changing the loading dock, and we want to discuss with you through the community board how the community best feels the above-ground portion of the triangle, specifically the park area, can be used to your benefit.
Yes, Maria Durr.
Hi. There's a variety of townhouse aesthetics in the village. What is the aesthetic design going to be of these townhouses? Federal, pre-Civil War, Greek Revival? Can you comment on that?
Did folks hear that question? What is the planned design of the new townhouses? Federal, Civil War, Gothic, Neo-Gothic? I don't know anything about architecture. Clearly.
Yeah. We are not directly copying a historical style. We don't believe that's in the spirit of the landmarks law or appropriate to landmark districts. You can't recreate the past in terms of craftsmanship, materials, and so forth. So what we are doing is adopting very carefully window proportions, window sizes, the balance between window opening and brick, using a variety of brick colors and stoops. It's not going to, and base courses and such. Really, our goal stylistically is not to stand out and not to be a statement, but really to be background buildings that fade into the fabric of the village. That's our aesthetic goal.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan. Are there questions from the community board? If not, we're now going to enter into the public comment portion of the evening. And if we could bring the microphone over to the stand on the right. Thanks, Bernadette.
I think you have your own microphone.
Oh, we have our own over there?
That was the stand. The stand is not. You want to use ours? But then we have a
And I'm going to announce 5 names at a time. If people could line up over here, and we're taking you, because we have 135 people here to speak tonight, we're taking you 1 minute at a time. So the first 5 are Sister Kevin Phillips, Bill Borak, Gil Horowitz, Marvin Bitha, and Brenda Murad. So if those folks could line up. So Sister Kevin Phillips is first, followed by Bill Borak, Gil Horowitz, Marvin Bitha, and Brenda Murad.
I'd like to introduce myself, and I hope you can hear me. If not, just raise your hand.
You have a minute, sister.
Okay. First of all, I'm really here for two reasons. One is I'm a member of the Sisters of Charity who co-sponsor St. Vincent's, but I'm also a lifelong resident of Greenwich Village. My family were born here, I was raised here, I went to school in PS 41 in the old building. You can tell it's not this one. But I'm here to say that our main desire is really to continue our mission of caring for the sick and for all who come to us in need, especially the poor. We are very conflicted about moving out of our own space. However, I've seen many changes in the village, as you have, some good and some bad. So our main goal is to provide the best quality of care, which we do not feel can be continued in the present location, even with renovations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill Borak, followed by Gil Horowitz.
Okay, as you can see, I am not Bill Borak. He had to leave to go to another meeting. He has
Okay, let's start.
All right, fine. Bill Borak is the president of the Council of Chelsea Block Associations, which is a coalition of block associations representing about 20 blocks active in the Chelsea area, which is immediately north of this proposed planned development. He says that we are certainly not against the modernization of St. Vincent's Hospital. However, as you are possibly aware, the Chelsea community had a similar precedent seeking to attempt by another institution, the General Theological Seminary, which, together with a developer, proposed a building plan which would have violated the Chelsea Historic District's height limitations and which would have been inappropriate for the neighborhood. There is a definite parallel with this proposal. The concerns were raised about the plan after many meetings and discussions with input from the community and the locally elected officials. The developer agreed to cancel their original plans. The project was scaled down, other modifications were made, an alternate plan was proposed and accepted, which did not violate the integrity of the historic district or the surrounding neighborhood.
Thank you.
We ask that you do the same thing.
Thank you very much. Followed by Marvin Bitha.
Dr. Gil Horowitz, President to Fifth Avenue Block Association, an affiliate of the Washington Square Lower Fifth Avenue Block Association. Against as proposed, totally against as proposed. We're not against St. Vincent's Hospital, we are against this particular proposal. This is not the first time the Rudins have entered a super block and provided a disaster to Fifth Avenue is the example. In the 1940s, Louis Rudin, the grandfather of Chairman Bill Rudin of the Rudin Organization, proposed the construction of 2 Fifth Avenue, raised 11 historic structures, including the Greenwich Village Community Church, the home where Henry James had lived with his grandmother, 18 Washington Square North, the Marble House at Fifth Avenue. In order to build, I'm proud to live at 2 Fifth Avenue because it's a nice location. That building should never have been built. This particular structure should never be built, as proposed. Something different, something smaller, something scaled, preserving the 9 historic structures and reducing the height, bulk, and disaster, the monstrous nature of it, would be entirely appropriate to help St. Vincent's. If the only way to facilitate a modern St. Vincent's is this proposal, the time has not yet come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Marvin Massey, and I'm a disabled paramedic.
Marvin, this is not cutting into your time. I just want to announce that we need Brenda Murad, Dr. Robert Lapides, Freda Seidenbaum and Marissa Marchetto to line up. Thank you. Now your time starts.
Start? Okay. Yes. My name is Marvin Bethea, and I'm a disabled paramedic from the St. Vincent's Hospital, and I was disabled from my activities on 9/11, and I survived the collapse of 2 towers. I cannot emphasize enough, thank you, not important. What I want to emphasize is it's critical that we have the state-of-the-art medical facility. Again, I don't try to frighten people with terrorism, but the reality is we live here in New York, it very well may happen. By having a state-of-the-art facility, not only will it benefit, God forbid, a terrorist attack, but it also will benefit the community. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to have great medical care. 5 weeks to the day of 9/11, I had lost 16 friends of mine that day. At 41, with no history, I suffered a massive stroke that left me paralyzed in my right arm and right leg. Thank God I had care from the St. Vincent's Hospital Network that I was able to recover, and I did go back to work 3 months later, and subsequently I had to stop working due to all the stuff I inhaled, and so I've been out of work now for 4 years. And I cannot emphasize enough why you need a state-of-the-art hospital. Again, if you had a computer that you bought 8 years ago, it's obsolete. So we need to make sure that we do have a state-of-the-art hospital.
Thank you, Mr. Bethea.
Again, and I'd just like to say to the community, I'd like to thank you all for your love and support that you gave all the responders on 9/11, and we sincerely do appreciate it. Thank you.
Brenda Murad, followed by Dr. Robert Lapidis. Brenda.
Good evening. My name is Brenda Murad. I'm a member of the board of 101 West 12th Street, and I too owe my life to St. Vincent's. I was born there, and I continue to get great medical care there. So I don't think anyone in this room has a question about that. But I think the folks at PS 41 were trying to send us a message. There's 42nd Street, there's the Village. This building is far too large for our neighborhood and historic. I am so concerned about the unprecedented scale of this project, and I'm very concerned that this application could change the landmark preservations and the beauty and the human scale of our neighborhood. Preservation and reuse would be a better alternative. I cannot believe that these creative minds who came up with this plan can't come up with a better way and a better scale. I do not believe it when they say this is a way to bring back the lower scale of our neighborhood. It's ridiculous. I support the community alternative plan. I encourage any one of you to take a look at what it is that we're proposing, and I really hope that St. Vincent's will heal and not hurt the Village. Continue to heal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Rapid,
My children were born at St. Vincent's, and I've always had good feelings toward it, and I think we should see it modernized. That's not the point here. We need to separate St. Vincent's and Rudin. We need to separate caring for people and making profit, huge profit. At the last meeting we had over at St. Vincent's, the Rudin representative said they were going to step in order to save St. Vincent's finances. Today, he said, we're going to do this to restore the historic architecture. That's a lot of crap. They're doing it to make money. Lots and lots of money. I noticed that Carol Greitzer got a big hand of applause because when she was on the city council, she always stood up for the community. And I wanted to say to the representatives of the politicians who did not show up today, tell your bosses that we want you to protect us. We need your protection.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you. Thank you. Melissa Marchetto, I will say that all the elected officials do have representatives here today. So, Ms. Marchetto.
Hi. I actually represent the voice of the patient. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in May 2004 when I went for just a routine exam, and my doctor, as part of St. Vincent's Hospital, he saved my life. I went on and I wrote a book about the life-saving doctors and the treatment that I got at St. Vincent's. I spoke all over the country at every major hospital, and I know, and I could tell you all firsthand, that St. Vincent's desperately needs to rebuild. So my point of view is I care about the patient, I care about the health care, and I think whatever it takes, I care that everybody deserves the best possible health care, and this is our hospital, and we need to save St. Vincent's. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Michelle. Thank you. Before we hear from Freda, is Freda Seidenbaum here? Freda Seidenbaum? She is not here. So Elizabeth Adam, if she could come down. Helene Zira, Harvey Alter, and Arlene Martin. So we'll start with Elizabeth Adam.
I'm Elizabeth Adam. I grew up on 12th Street.
The mic, please.
I'm Elizabeth Adam. I grew up on 12th Street, and I'm here as a member of the 12th Street Block Association. As such, I'm appalled at the thought of a skyscraper being built in our historically zoned neighborhood. Has everyone forgotten that Greenwich Village is a landmark district? Not since the days of Robert Moses has Greenwich Village been in such peril. I care deeply about the character of my neighborhood. I am also concerned that the heart of our community is turning to stone. New developments, co-ops, and condominium conversions drive out lower-income residents, the very people who have helped to make the village the desirable community it is today. But landmarking as a district doesn't only mean preserving its buildings, it also means protecting its people. Yes. Bringing in 500 additional families into a community whose resources are already overloaded is unconscionable. We don't have the structure to support that many new residents. Not to mention that our schools are already over capacity and our subway system can't handle the increased load. Here, there is an enormous need for affordable housing like West Beth and a room for our ever-growing schools. Why do we need to build more high-priced condominiums for millionaires at the expense of the residents?
Thank you, Ms. Adams. Thank you. Helene Zira, followed by Arlene Martin and Harvey Alter. So get ready.
That was great. I have 2 minutes worth of stuff to say here. I'm going to go very fast. Here's why I'm opposed to this ill-begotten plan to rebuild St. Vincent's with arrogant disregard to the character of the village. And by the character, I don't mean the look of the real estate or the architecture. If you say to anybody, anywhere on earth, Greenwich Village, they conjure up a certain image, and it's funky, and it's open-hearted, it's artistic, it's poetic, it's jazzy, it's tolerant, whatever. That makes this neighborhood one of the most significant areas in the city and one of our most precious unrenewable resources. To bring in 500 units of luxury housing, or 400, is absolutely an insult to the sensibility of this community. We must allow for reasonable growth. This is not that, and we are asked to do this in the name of a hospital that has bankrupted itself and the investment interests of a real estate development company. It is not in our interest to accommodate the luxury units. It's not in our interest to erect tall buildings. It's not in our interest to, it's worse for our local retailers, blah, blah, blah. I want to go on to, it's not in the interest of our children because they will have no place to go to school. It's not in the interest of our neighborhood to push out middle-class housing. It is not. I'm going to do 2 seconds, I promise you. In the interest of the hospital's patients that we're always hearing touted, to have to share this limited Costa Street access and parking, and then already, please, just give me a second and I will be gone.
1 second.
That's it. It's not in the interest of the hospital's patients to have to travel from one decentralized building to others in sites that have yet to be determined in order to obtain the treatment they need. So let's not say this is Clara Barton.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Helene. I think Helene has found her calling. Arlene Martin.
If I may, I will submit a copy of my speech because we've been cut to 1 minute. Instead, I will read from something that a man wrote who's far more eloquent than I. First of all, I support the community alternative plan. I'm going to quote from a letter to the editor by Carl Stein, a well-known and highly respected architect. It was in the weekly newspaper of Chelsea, January 4th to the 10th. He says, "The currently proposed plan is First and foremost, about money. There is no question that if the sale of the St. Vincent's property were not the driving force for this proposal, a totally state-of-the-art medical facility could be built without any increase in the existing building volume. There is also no question that this proposal will fundamentally compromise the scale of the village forever. In this, it is different at its core from any of the St. Vincent's expansions in the last 50 years, the period in which we came to realize the incredible value of the unique qualities of our historic neighborhood.
Thank you.
The first 300-foot-tall building in the village will be a watershed. Once this precedent is set, it will be that much harder to argue for contextually scaled developments. I thank you.
Harvey's not here. We'd like Matt Bainey